while eating the dinner with the two girls at the nightclub, and it was like sitting on his face. It was like, yes, please get some.
It's his lap. It's not his face.
Well, lap. Yeah. Well, he got flustered.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to the Nerd Taku Podcast, where we watch it so you don't have to. I'm your host, Eli. With me is my co-host, Ben.
Hey guys, how's it going? Happy freaking New Year!
Happy New Year to everyone. This week, we're reviewing the 2022 anime film, Suzume. Spoiler warnings ahead. Ben, my dude, are there spoilers in this episode?
You can't have a show like this without it, of course.
There's always spoilers. Director, Makoto Shinkai. Main cast, Nicole Sakura, Josh Keaton, Josephine Leah Marano. Ben, this film. Someone at work was telling me about this film about 6 months ago, and I was like, ooh, I'm super interested. Then, I forgot about it after a while. Then we watched that trailer, and boy, the colors, the excitement, it was just so good. All around, it was a great trailer. And then when we dived into this, my dude, I will say this. I was not disappointed for the slightest. I was not disappointed at all with the overall of this film. What were your initial thoughts of this film?
I saw the trailer for this, and I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta go see that in theaters. Didn't end up getting a chance to see it in theaters. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll wait. Forgot about it. And then this got brought up to put on this show, and I'm like, fuck yeah. Rewatched the trailer, super stoked for it. Dove into it, and like you said, no disappointment. I rated it a 9 on the last episode for the trailer, and it got higher than what I rated. I was completely engulfed in this film. It was stunning. I can't wait to dive into this with you guys. So fucking good.
Yeah, I know. This film was beyond all expectations. So I gave this film a 9.25.
I also gave this film a 9.25.
It'll be interesting to see where our differences were or in our same in this review. So the synopsis to Suzume is a modern action adventure road story where a 17-year-old girl named Suzume helps a mysterious young man close doors for the other side that are releasing disasters all over in Japan.
I'm assuming that's the IMDb.
Yes, this is the IMDb one that I usually go off of because most people who are going to be watching this or listening to this podcast usually probably go to IMDb for their stuff. Only the true anime. If you do have the My Anime List on Net one,
I do have it.
Would you like to give that synopsis as well?
This one gives a much more detailed synopsis. On her way to school one day, Suzume stumbles upon Sota, a young man searching for abandoned areas. The high school girl directs Sota to a nearby ruin, but out of pure curiosity, she herself decides to head to the same destination. Once there, Suzume discovers an isolated door with a dreamlike universe lying beyond it. A place that she can see and feel, but not enter. A strange stone rests on the ground nearby, but it turns into a cat-like creature and scurries away when Suzume lifts it. Suddenly afraid, she heads back toward her school, not realizing that her act of leaving the door open will have consequences. With the keystone released, the evil within the other universe can now freely escape and wreak havoc throughout Japan. Intending to correct her dangerous mistake, Suzume joins Sota, whose true goal is to prevent evil from festering in finding and locking all open doors before the country is destroyed.
See, when you compare both synopsises, it actually is night and day different. If you want to see a good anime one, I would recommend going to myanimelist.net. But for your average,
Always.
always, but the average consumer will go to IMDb. So
If you are looking for an anime or an anime movie, My Anime List is always the one to go to.
yes, it's always a good choice to find great anime, and you'll find very in-depth reviews. You'll find very in-depth synopsis. It's just overall the best spot for anime. So let's get into this. So let's start with plot.
I gave plot a 1.
I gave plot a 0.75.
Okay, let me hear it.
So the story begins with this girl named Suzume, who is just your average ordinary girl. And she is just going to school and sees this random man. And it might be due to culture, but most times after you answer the question, most people just forget, right? You know, as they were talking. The plot, her motivation for this whole thing just confused me. This whole motivation, because she immediately dropped her whole life to do this, like from the start. Like she jumped on a train, she jumped on a boat, she just to follow this one thing. Like she dropped her whole life. It In the beginning it just was very confusing. It made more sense near the end. I'll say that. More plot holes were answered, but the beginning it just didn't make sense to me how she immediately just dropped her whole life. Like she's 17, she's doing all this, and for someone that she felt like she knew, she dropped almost everything. Her education, her aunt, like dropped everything for this one dude she's maybe knew for 20 minutes. That was a very confusing thing of why would you do that in this plot? Why would you just drop everything your whole life in the beginning? So that's why I gave it the 0.75.
That can be answered by, as a child, she went through a trauma. Her mom died. And the only thing she could remember from that time was being in a field alone with someone that looked similar to Sota, with the coat coming up to her as a child and getting her out of that situation before her aunt came and got her. She wanted answers to if that was the person that she knew. That's why she decided to skip school that day and go find him. Then, when she ended up finding the door, she recognized this kind of sky-like area. And when she tried to walk into the area, she couldn't. She kept going back and forth. Found the keystone, ended up picking it up, became a cat, scared the crap out of her, and so she left. Then she was the only one that could see the evil worm coming out of the door.
Yeah.
None of her friends, nobody could see it. That's what led her to go back to that area. And as she saw Sota trying to close the door, they finally got the door closed. Sota was hurt, so she takes him back to her place to fix her up because her mom was a nurse, so she knew some things. And then the cat follows them to her apartment at the window, gets the fish, talks to her, and then turns Sota into a chair.
Mm-hmm.
That's what led her on the adventure. They were trying to catch the cat to get Sota back. But in the process, she helps Sota close doors.
Yes.
Then Sota becomes the keystone. She realizes that she loves Sota, so she's trying to find a way to get Sota out of the other world and back into hers. That is the reasoning behind why she dropped her life. It's because she thought she knew him, wanted to find out who he was, ended up helping him. He got turned into a chair, and then she wants to help him from the other world as the keystone. That explains it all. It's all explained.
So the question I have is why in the whole time They were together. He could have answered this question as in a chair. She never asked it. So it was just confusing. Why did she never ask if you remember a little girl? Why was that question never asked? Because this whole time she's thinking it's him, thinking he was there. Or
Because
someone.
she's distracted. She's distracted by the responsibility that's already on her shoulders now to help shut the doors and getting him back into his original body from being a chair. But if you think about it, the plot line is she wants answers. She finds this person trying to shut a door, ends up helping him. He gets turned into a chair. And then this adventure is trying to get him his body back and getting the doors closed. That's the synopsis. That's what happens. That's the plot. It's
All right.
pretty straightforward.
All right. I'll give it to you. I'll bring it up to a 1. Bring it up to a 1. Because it is self-explanatory after that explanation. Thank you.
Although I do find it funny that while the show is progressing, when she is waiting for the bus in one of the towns, she just randomly says yes to getting a ride from some random lady with kids in the back seat. And then this lady, for some reason, ends up trusting Suzume with her kids while she goes to work. I was like, what person in their right mind is going to pick someone off the street and allow them to watch their kids while she goes to work? I just found that kind of funny. It has nothing to do with the plot. I was just like, what? Who does that?
Japanese
Who the fuck does that?
Japanese culture. I've noticed that in like anime when you see that whole thing. American culture is so different. It's like night and day. Oh yeah, I'll let you watch my kids. I just met you 10 minutes ago. What? In America, you'd have to have 9 months of babysitting experience, plus you would need to know the family for like a year, plus you need all this paperwork and all these certifications. Yeah, it's just different.
It was just weird to me. I'm like, okay,
Oh,
cool.
And she had a part-time job for like few hours doing dishes and
Yeah, serving
Doing
at
whatever.
the nightclub. Yeah,
I found it interesting that it's in that lady's house is the nightclub.
right.
Yeah, I found that so interesting. Acting.
0.75.
I gave it a 1. Why could you not give that a 1?
Because all of them are new to it, and you could definitely tell. Nicole only has 2 shows under her belt since 2021. Josh has 5 since 2022, with 1 title in 2015. He didn't have a lot. And Josephine, it was her very first film. It wasn't bad. I'm not downgrading it at all. It was not terrible voice acting. It was really good, really well done. But you could hear the inexperience, and for such a high promoted film, and with how well the cinematics were done, and I feel like a more experienced cast would have made the film better. It was just too new and too big of a project to go with an inexperienced cast. I loved it, but the Japanese cast was way more experienced than what the American cast, the dub cast was. I feel like it was such a big project. They probably should have went with a more experienced cast.
So, my argument to keep it as a 1. Yes, mind you, some of these actors had few jobs, but you got to look at what kind of jobs they did. Like Josh Keaton. Josh Keaton did the voice of the Spectacular Spider-Man for 27 episodes, and then he did a project. He did a project, Voltron, Legendary Defender. He was 70 episodes in that. So like he had the chops. I felt like this cast, mind you, I did not like the cat. Like for the first hour, I could not stand the voice of the cat. It was bothering me, and I could see it, the inexperience with that one. But I felt like the other 2 were just, the chemistry was really there. I felt like their voices matched very well, and overall, it was just a really solid performance. Yes, the inexperience did show time to time, but I felt their chemistry was good enough there to give it the 1, because I felt like you could still feel that connection with the 2 main voice actors.
I could feel a connection, but it just wasn't enough to really connect me to either one of them. I just, to me, having a couple new people out. Sure, Josh had quite a few episodes, and I'm not saying that they didn't do a fantastic job. They really did. It just, I could feel and hear the inexperience in their voices throughout this film.
Character development.
0.75.
Hey, we matched. 0.75.
Cool.
Cool. Why did you give it a 0.75?
That one was mainly because so, as you had said, it's kind of weird. I know why she did it, why she started out. It makes sense to me, just because, I got to know who this person is, and now I got to help him with his body. Suzume's development was a roller coaster. It started out as, I got to find out who this is, and so she pursues it. Then she completely forgets about herself. What she wants to do is get Sota's body back, save Sota. So her development wasn't about herself. It was about helping Sota, which is great, because that in and of itself ended up helping her development. Because now, by the end, it makes it so that when she goes through the final door and sees herself, admits that she knew for the longest time her mother was dead at that point, and that the person that helped her in the other world was Suzume herself. She just didn't want to admit it for the longest time. The development that lacked mostly was Sota's. He was pretty constant throughout. It was, I gotta shut these doors because it's a family thing. Yes, he wanted to be a teacher, but throughout this film, there wasn't any real plateau of development through Sota. His was, I'm gonna shut these doors and I'm gonna get my body back. But he already knew everything that he had to do. He tried catching the cat a few times to get his body back, and really the development that he had there towards the end was when he realized that he was the Keystone now, and told Suzume, I'm glad that I got to meet you. Thank you for this adventure. Now send me plunging into this other world and leave me there for the rest of my life. I'm dead. I'm the Keystone. But throughout, it was just a constant state of, there was nothing that rose or fell in Sota's story until the very end, when he realized that he was the Keystone. So I couldn't quite, because he's part of the main. I couldn't quite. It missed that singular bump to push it up to a 1.
See, I agree with you there. I felt Sota's his development was very lackluster. I was watching throughout this film. I was hoping to find more about the teaching thing and a little more background towards that, but it really did focus on the two things: getting his body in the doors. And after that, after he had that plateau, like the climax where he became the Keystone and he accepted the fate, he was non-existent. Even at the end when they got his body back, it really wasn't developing worthy. I felt Daichi, the cat, had better development than Sota, because of the fact that the cat started as, oh, friend and all this stuff, but then all of a sudden at the end, wherein the cat's like, it's just you and me, and then Suzume is like, I hate you. What? Collapsed. And then that one scene with the grandfather, knowing that was when the cat came to the window, you saw that the cat saw that whole conversation, and the cat went to be helpful, not vengeful, saying, oh, she hates me. No, the cat went and helped.
Mm-hmm.
And the other Keystone, the other cat,
Sadajin.
Sadajin, came and helped as well. So the development of those two were way better than Sota's, because Sota didn't have any. He had that one moment, that gleaming moment, and then that's it. Suzume's, like you said, roller coaster everywhere. You can pinpoint a moment of like the greatest development. Overall, the story was development hell. And it was progression, digression, progression, digression. It was like back and forth, back and forth. Overall, I keep it at the 0.75 because a main character needs to have some good progression.
Agreed.
And if it's going to be flatter than heartbeat monitor flatlining, I don't know what to do. That's kind of where I'm at. It's not bad, but it's not great.
Agreed.
Sound and music,
Oh, I got a 1.
dude. The most solid one. When you finish the film and the main song gets stuck in your head, my dude, so good, so good. What made it not get a 0.75 or below for you?
Dude, every single scene every intense worm scene pulled you in. That music, I got fucking goosebumps, dude. Every time they fought those worms, every time I got fucking they're riding on the ferry over to the new location, and I got Cowboy Bebop flashbacks with how that music was going. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I fucking love this. This music pulled you in. There was not a dry spell with this music at all. I fucking loved it.
No, this music was for anime movies. This is one of the best soundtracks. Like it kept the intensity there in every scene that the worm was in. I felt the suspense. I felt the anticipation of what's going to happen. Are they going to make it? Are they going to save everyone? It was so good. It just kept you on the edge of your seat, like you were saying.
And it wasn't overpowering. It didn't overpower what was going on in the screen. It was just perfect.
Yes. No, I agree with you there. It did not overpower. So I loved it so much. And just the simple things were just so good. Just the simple music that you heard. It was just so good. Cinematography and animation.
A 1, my guy.
I had to give it a 0.75.
I gotta hear why.
So in the it's because of a scene. It's the biggest scene in Tokyo. That creature, that the worm that's becoming this big pancake like dome type thing. The animation was off to me. There was a part where it looked almost a little too CGI'd, and I couldn't like the scene. That was the one moment that I snapped back into reality and went, what happened? It looked off. It looked like I was watching Genlock from, what was that company? Rooster Teeth, where it just didn't fit with the background. Mind you, everything else, spectacular. I could not say anything negative beyond that. But that one scene, the biggest scene, the climax scene of the creature growing into this big scene, and it looks like the budget gave out. I couldn't stand by and give it a 1 if the big climax scene was going to give me not the greatest animation. It pulled me away. It pulled me away for the moment, and I was like, wow, that kind of was a little jarring.
I can see that. It did, it was kind of spotty, but it didn't pull away from the overall scene, because that actually wasn't the climax of the film. It was when Suzume was pulling Sota out of the keystone. That's the climax. But I can see what you're talking about. But overall, that's a tiny blip of the extraordinary art that went into this film. There was the water coming down every time they stopped the worm from coming out. There was her first entering the water-filled ruins that went up to her. The water went up to their ankles, and the ripples that came off her ankles. The close up of the ripples. You have your scenery, the coloring on the worms as they're coming up out of the, getting that tornado swirl going on as they're coming out of the doors for the first time. There's so much color, vibrance, and the drawn art throughout is just that tiny little minuscule cloud of a worm right there. Just it didn't affect the way that I viewed this film at all. I can't drop it from a 1. There was so much good that tiny little blip had no effect on me at all. My eyes were still glued to that screen. There was nothing, no effect. I have seen much worse CGI on many of projects compared to what I saw in this film.
And also, I did look at this from his other works, like the directors and the cinematography, all their works as well. And with Your Name as like the first one of these 3, and Weathering with You, those 2, like this one, I was expecting it to be cleaner with that. That scene like caught me off guard. It really did. That's why I give the 0.75. I do agree with you. Like overall, this film was amazing, but for me, that's why I'm giving it the 0.75. It's like a point, that moment where it's like a 0.85, where it's like in the middle. I'm gonna go. I had to go on the lower end. Directing
got a 1.
I'm in the fence on this. Why did you give it a 1?
Let me hear why you're on the fence.
I think it was the plot thing that you agreed, that you helped me figure out, that made it now better. So I'm thinking it is a 1. It is a 1. So because the plot thing, I was like, why did direction? But now I'm looking at it going, it made sense. I can't really find anything negative of what this director did. I felt like he did a good overall, amazing on the story. Like the story kept me wanting more. I wanted more throughout, and I was just waiting and wanting more. It was engrossing me. So I love how the director approached this film.
I agree. I feel like if I had to drop it, it would be because of the cast he chose, just for me. But I'm not going to drop it because the cinematography was amazing. The music choice, I cannot emphasize on how amazing that music was. I just feel like he knew what he wanted. He delivered it. The story was exactly what the synopsis says. It flowed. No downside. There was no lull. It just flowed perfectly. And that is because of the way that Makoto saw it going, and it flowed. Just like Your Name, just like his previous projects. He knows what he wants. He knows how he wants it delivered, and it's gonna be delivered. There was no lull in this film. It was perfect. Well, close to perfect. It was amazing.
Attraction.
A 1.
I gave this a 1. The colors in this were just so encapsulating. I was very enticed by it because of the trailer. And also, I really did thoroughly enjoy this experience. Like the beginning kept me going. It went quick. Like things were just going. I didn't feel like there was a slow moment until they were probably sitting on the boat trying to eat food, and he was like, I really don't got an appetite. And then they just sat there for a moment, and it was like a little quiet. I felt like that was like the first slow moment, and that was just like, wow, okay. Whoa, let me just take a minute to like calm down from all this action, excitement. But like it was so good. I just loved how well it kept me enthralled.
Absolutely. From the beginning, you see her walking through this field, dirty, messed up. She's a little girl. She's breathing heavily, steam coming off her breath. again, that goes into cinematography as well. It was outstanding. Right from the beginning, you're caught and you want to see, why is this little girl in a field by herself? Why is she breathing hard? What's wrong with her clothing? Why is she all scuffed up? What's going on? And then it circles into her being an adult, and that was a memory of her past as a child. Then it keeps going into the story, and you keep getting further and further into her backstory. And Sota comes in, then Daiji comes in, and it just keeps getting better and better and better until it comes to the end, and it circles back to her being a little girl, and you realize, holy shit, the whole time the person that gave her the chair in the other world was her older self. It wasn't her mother, like it leads you to believe the entire film. It was her. There's just so much to this that pulls you in. It's beautiful. The animation's gorgeous. The story, the sound and music, it's all there that keeps you captivated. Attraction could not be any lower than a 1. If I could go higher, I would. It was an amazing film.
Can I just say one thing? I love the ending when she was in like her attire and then she sees Soto, and I'm like, oh, he actually came back. Oh my
Right?
goodness. I was like so
Right?
excited. Oh, it was so good. Dialogue.
That got a 0.75
I gave it a 1. Why did you give it a 0.75?
because there was only one quote that really stuck out to me. There were some funny quotes. Suzume first walking, or when she first goes to find Sota, she's like, "Hello, guy from earlier." Says a little bit of other things, and then she's like, "Oh no, am I a total stalker?" It made me laugh, but it didn't really, it wasn't something that resonated with me. Another one that made me laugh is they crash the car and the roof starts to go back. I'm like, "Oh, watch, it's actually going to close." And it closes all the way. And he's like, "Hey, roof's fixed. His car is destroyed, but the roof is fixed."
The roof is fixed.
It did make me laugh. There were some funny parts. Though really the only line that really resonated with me is when Suzume is talking to her younger self and she says, "The morning will come again and you'll grow up, basking in its light." She's trying to convince this little girl that it's not the end of the world for you. Yes, your mother is dead and it hurts. But along the journey, as you're growing older, you're going to make friends. You're going to find your aunt's going to love you. Your aunt's going to be your mother. She's going to treat you just like a daughter. Your life is going to be okay. And you do find love. So just keep going. Bask in the light of tomorrow, not the darkness of today. Beautifully put. Wonderfully put. That was really the only line that resonated and came forth and really made me feel something. Otherwise, it was a lot of witty banter, a lot of back and forth, some funny parts, but just one real thing that really hit you.
I gave it a 1 because of the humor. So, like, we've watched a bunch of films lately, and the dialogue has always been super serious and super, like, meaningful. And yes, that line that Suzume says to herself is the most profound line in the film. But you got to give it to the humor in this one. When Suzume's babysitting and they're like, the kids are riding on the chair because Soto comes out and wants to play. And she goes, "My turn." And he goes, "No." Like straight up, like, no, Suzume. Like the the humor throughout this film with the car and then the kid. I found more humor in this than serious, but the humor made me smile. It brought joy to me in a serious matter where they're trying to find Soto's body, but like the humor was there. It was just so funny. I love the fact that she chose to sit on the chair while eating the dinner with the two girls at the nightclub, and it was like sitting on his face. It was like, yes, please get some.
It's his lap. It's not his face.
Well, lap, yeah. Well, he got flustered. You know it.
All
You
right,
know-
all right. I'll give it to you. I'll raise it to a 1. It had some great little highlights in it. I can feel it.
Let's go. I got you to change your mind. Let's go. It was so good. If it brings a smile to my face and I still love the story and it's still a serious topic, serious matter, yes.
Yeah, I was trying to find something that really resonated, but if you look down and dirty, it's an adventure, it's a fantasy. It's not really an emotional struggle type film. So, yes, the humor is very important in this type of setting. So, yes, I will raise it to a 1.
Daiji does say a line that I really like. I cried. I teared up a little bit. I can't be your cat no more.
Yeah, when he gets put back as the
Yeah,
Keystone.
I cried. I
I
cried.
was like, oh.
I cried because you know what? You hated the animal, you hated the cat for the longest time, but then the cat started to help and got injured, and then you're like, I'm sorry, man.
That's the thing. I didn't even really hate Daijin. I felt like it was a person, an object that was stuck as a keystone for so long. All it wanted was a new adventure, right?
Yeah.
And it just wanted Sota out of the way so Daijin could play with Suzume, right?
Yeah, it's like
Suzume freed him, got him not on purpose, but freed him, gave him some anchovies, and he loved Suzume. And then Suzume says, "Go away, I never want to see you again." And it boom, alter right quick. His happy,
hurts.
beautiful fur goes back to its raggedy self and sadness. All this Keystone wanted was life. So you couldn't really hate Daijin. Yeah, he turned Sota into a fucking chair, and the whole time they're trying to get him back, but all this cat wanted was the love of Suzume and to live, to have its own life rather than being stuck as a keystone to prevent this worm from coming out of the other world. You had to feel for it, right? You felt for this poor cat.
I cried.
And when he says,
cried.
I can't be your cat anymore, or she, whatever Daijin is, says, I can't be your cat anymore, it hurts.
I cried like a child. Personally, it's been a real rough week, but I cried so hard. I needed a good cry, and it helped me.
I mean, let's just say that was definitely a tangent, but you gotta feel for this poor little guy. You really do.
The line that you hear from that just overall encapsulated that character to its fullest.
Absolutely. That's where you realize all it wanted was to be her cat.
Damn you, kitty cat. I just want to hug you. I just want to hug the cat. Scenery.
That got a 1.
That was the easiest one I could give.
Right?
Like the scenery, dude, breathtaking. The lighting was so good. The dark scenes were so well lit. It was just overall just an amazing scenery throughout this film. The colors in the afterlife, just so mesmerizing and so like popping. I just love the color dynamic that it was giving in this film. The versatility of what this director decided to do with the colors. Oh, so good. I just love the overall structure he did.
Agreed. Not only in the afterlife where it was just vibrant and gorgeous and starry and just
Mesmerizing.
absolutely captivating, mesmerizing. But out in the real world, the lightings, even when they went to the abandoned park, the abandoned middle school, it was darkened, but it wasn't overshadowed. there was enough light to show that this is a very dramatic scene because this worm is coming out of this door, but it wasn't dark. It had enough lighting and vibrance even in those scenes that you were still pulled to this screen. You were in this and you're like, "Ooh, she's getting this door, she's getting it." When the park lights all turn on because Sota and Daijin end up falling into the generator and turning everything on. It lights up this park. It lights up the red worm that's coming out of this door. And then you see her see the afterlife and get hypnotized into trying to get into this door. And Sota's trying to scream towards her, can't scream at her. And he jumps all over to try to get to her. I mean, it's just so much to this that a 1 is more than justified. There is so much color. There is so much vibrance. So beautiful. It's just, it's captivating. It's
It's
just
so good.
well done. So well done.
Yeah,
I'm at a loss for words because it's so beautiful.
I agree with you there. It's a hard thing to describe this scenery. It's so good. Recommend.
You can't give this lower than a 1. You can't.
There's no way this film is less than a 1. You see this whole encapsulating film and it's just so good. Overall, this film is recommended to anyone, whether you watch anime or not. It's just an overall good film. It's a good fantasy adventure with humor. Such good humor. And I could not deny, I would recommend this to anyone. Anyone, any age. It's so good.
I love that it didn't focus solely on a love story. It had all these different things. It was an original idea of Japan gets earthquakes all the time. So let's make it into a story. Let's say that this creature that comes out of these doors from the other world is the cause of these earthquakes. And every time it's trying to get out of this door, it's very minute, very small earthquakes. But if it gets out and it hits Earth, it is a powerful, destructive force. I loved it. I love that it brought out its own originality, saying earthquakes are caused by this other world where your souls go after death. That's what this other world is. Just go give it a shot, please. You will not regret watching this film. I promise you. The art, the cinematics, the plot, sound and music, especially the music, the attraction, dialogue, now that we've talked about it, scenery for sure. Please, 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 if you get the chance, spare a couple hours and go watch this film. I promise you, you will not regret it. Like Eli said, anime watcher or not, it is an amazing film.
So overall, this film, I changed a little bit. I got awoken a little bit. I gave it a 9.5.
I as well gave it a 9.5 because you brought my dialogue up.
You brought my plot up. So we help each other out.
Again, when I first saw this trailer, I gave it a 9 and it ended with a 9.5. So what I expected was delivered.
Yeah.
And it was delivered higher than what I was originally gave. So boom, look at that. It was so fucking good.
I gave it an 8.5 and the expectations I was given blew me out of the water. It was so good.
Absolutely.
Okay, as we wrap up this week's episode, I'd like to talk about next week's episode that we're going to be looking at the trailer for. It's the 2013 drama called Perks of Being a Wallflower. Dude, this trailer, just so whimsical. It's so catchy. Like, it had humor, it had serious lines, it had an overall great intro to telling what the story is. I think it's about a boy. I haven't seen this film in a while, so it's about a boy who's trying to find friends. It's just so wholesome through this trailer. It's so good. I loved it, every second of it. And I will say this, Emma Watson, damn, she be looking good back then. Still looks good now, but damn, she looked, the short hair, so good. So this film, I'm expecting things. I'm expecting good things. So I'm expecting a 7.5.
The music alone catches you in this trailer. Imagine Dragons, right? They were super popular back in the early 2000s when it were, 2012 to about 15. Super popular. And of course, they're going to put it in the trailer. That music just catches you straight up right when you start watching this trailer. And then there's, like you said, there's the witty banter going on, some jokes, some actual quotes. This boy is just, from what it looks like, looking for friends. And it seems that he finds them. He says, you should write a book about us. You can call it The Slut and the
Falcon,
right? Slut and Falcon. And you're just like, what the fuck? Okay. And Emma Watson standing out in the truck as they're driving by. Oh, don't worry. She does this all the time. There's just, it's a friendship. It's what you want in high school. It's that friendship. So I'm expecting pretty good. I also am going to give it a 7.5. This trailer really pulls you in. It makes you want to go see this film.
Be aggressive. Be passive aggressive. I love that line in the trailer. It was so good. As we wrap up this week's episode of Nerd Taku Podcast, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning into this week. If you want to follow us, we're on Instagram and Reels at nerd_taku_podcast. We're on all major streaming platforms, and we're on YouTube under Kingdom Notes Studios. My name is Eli.
I'm Ben.
Thanks for tuning into this week's episode, and have a great one.
Thanks, guys. Happy New Year. Can't wait to see you next week.
Happy New Year.